It's my pleasure to describe two of the projects of the Roundtable. My kids would say these are cool projects, and they are cool. I would say that they are practical, and I think they are practical. The standards of excellence, of which in your packet there's a case study of its execution in Kerry, in the Diocese of Kerry, is really the bedrock of what the Leadership Roundtable is trying to do. It is a package of 55 best practices for multiple organizations. It was actually developed by a group in Maryland for non-for-profit organizations. The Roundtable took that, and with the assistance of some distinguished canon lawyers, churchified it. Isn't that the technical? Isn't that the technical name? But it's really one of the things we've learned at the Roundtable is how do you take things that work in the business sector that aren't a perfect fit in the church world and adjust them to make it a perfect fit. So what it means by having gone through this process is if you were a bishop and someone gave you these standards, you'd say, well, I'm going to give them to my lawyer to make sure that they work and they don't foul up. And so you give them to the lawyer, and the lawyer says, yeah, they've been perfectly adopted to work within the canons of the church. And it just makes it easy to execute. But they've been fine-tuned in two different ways. There is a different set for dioceses than for parishes and for not-for-profit Catholic organizations, because they have different objectives and different executions. And the other way they've been fine-tuned, recognizing the church as it is today, is they've been translated into Spanish. And hopefully out of that we will get broad usage. About 10,000 copies have been distributed to date. There are 317 partners in excellence, representing 24 different dioceses and 15 Catholic nonprofits. And it's really, they are very practical. In my diocese, we have a new center for evangelization, which we're very proud of. Father Gino Silva called me one afternoon and said, well, now we've got to start figuring out how to develop the board of directors and the bylaws and all of that. Do you have any suggestions, Tom? And I said, yes, I will send you your bylaws. Would you like them in English or Spanish? and it is just, they are very practical, and a lot of what is there is just good common sense, especially on the financial side. But they are also very sophisticated, and there's a whole program for executing them effectively. There's substantial amount of background material to allow any organization to implement them. In the last 4 months alone, they've been adopted in archdioceses as far apart as Boston and Anchorage, the Eparchy of Passaic, and the Diocese of Knoxville. And they've been developed and they've been guided by a group of Roundtable members who are both diocesan leaders, subject matter leaders, and advertising executive. And thanks to Kathleen McChesney for helping to orchestrate that. We have a full-time project manager, Peter Danio. Peter is in the back, and his full-time focus from 6 in the morning is on expanding this program. There's a website that makes the education resources available in a convenient fashion, a discussion forum. We also we believe in best practices, and one of the best practices in a project like this is after it's gotten started to do an assessment. The University of Notre Dame did do an assessment. It was funded by the Carnegie Corporation, and it's been published and is in the registration package. And not only does it help provide some mid-course correction, but it also found a statistically significant improvement in all of the 8 areas covered by the standards in places where they've been practiced. We have a communication effort that's being launched right now with actual advertising in 10 different Catholic publications. And again, thank you to the group of members of the Roundtable who have led this practice. Our goal remains to get these into every parish and Catholic organization in the country. I would encourage you to look at the website, www.Catholic Standards for Excellence. I would encourage you to, if you're interested in more information or making it available to your local area, there's a breakout session this afternoon. I would encourage you to catch up with Peter and also to Michael Bruff, who is over there, if you have more questions or want more follow-up over the next 2 days. The second project is more of a is younger, and so what I want to give you is a pilot report. Catholic Leadership 360, created by the Roundtable, and it is to take the practice that many businesses employ successfully of providing professional, organized feedback to the participants. So in this case, it could be pastors or bishops or lay leaders, in a thoughtful way that is designed not to be critical, but to be part of the ongoing formation and development of these leaders. Especially, I think, being a pastor today is a very lonely occupation, and so the more help we can and support we can give them, the better the church is going to be. We've had partnership on this project with the Center for Creative Leadership, the National Association of Church Personnel Administrators, and the National Federation of Priest Councils. And the support of those three organizations is what has made this a success so far. And if it sounds like the Roundtable believes in partnering, we do. We don't have enough resources to do it. The projects are ambitious, and this has been a terrific help. It's been piloted in Pittsburgh and Metuchen. The first evaluation of this, again, one of the watchwords being assessment, found that 96% of the participants would recommend the process to others. Now, the only thing I can think of that would hit a 96% success ratio, the only other thing, is serving somebody ice cream. And I think that'd get 96. We do that too. But the two things that seem to have been most appreciated, one's the ongoing development, and the other is a built-in one-on-one feedback session that's part of the process. It's being expanded in Chicago and California later this year. The website's to be launched. And what we would love to get from you all today and tomorrow is guidance on how to best promote this unique tool. Father Richard Vega, in the middle of our crowd, is the project manager. Kathy Rangione and Michael Bruff would love to hear from you. Kathy is... And so during the course of the next 2 days. Just to conclude, what's common about these two things, they are scalable. They can be taken to every diocese and every parish. We have a professional process of developing them, including assessment, mid-course improvement. Where we need help, frankly, and where we maybe have fallen short a little, is on promotion, because they should be in all 200 dioceses and they should be in all 20,000 parishes. How do we get them there? And we would love your guidance and advice on that during the next 2 days. And that's a nice segue to my friend Chuck Geschke, who's going to, one of the things he's going to talk about is how do we improve some of our promotion.
Thanks, Tom. That was a great summary. I'm going to focus on two areas of activities that have occurred over the past year, and in fact have been going on for some time at the Roundtable. One area is in consultancy in terms of helping and using the resources, not just of the Leadership Roundtable, but more importantly, the network of context that people involved in this activity can bring to bear. And the second area is communications and the media, and what we're doing to try and expand the visibility of this project throughout the Catholic community. Beginning with consultancy, the Roundtable's consultancy team has already successfully completed 18 projects that provide direct assistance to dioceses, schools, and religious communities and other Catholic organizations around the country. So as you can see, it's already a very active area. And we also provide, through the Leadership Roundtable's membership network, access to some quality practitioners who can work with the parishes and the dioceses to take on the expertise of doing certain kinds of problem solving, for planning, and for execution in areas of management, human resources, and finance. Basically trying to provide a substructure that the church can use in terms of learning how to do more effective operations in those areas. We also have a growing pipeline of opportunities that we have coordinated with various foundations in bringing to the fore in terms of management consultancy organizations and a pool of consultants that are climated both to the perspective of the Leadership Roundtable and to the contemporary needs of the Catholic Church. This year we worked with our first religious community on a 6-month engagement focusing on governance and matters of finance. And we're about to sign up a new men's religious order for a major financial audit. And I think these are important first steps in helping the infrastructure of the church get up to speed in terms of making sure that its affairs are in order so we can avoid the kind of public embarrassments that the church has dealt with over the last several years. And finally, our consulting committee and director of consulting, Michael Costigan, would welcome any leads that you have that could help in providing more of these services. Michael is where? There he is, up there. So be sure to share some of your ideas with him during the next day and a half. We've also had 2 national initiatives that have been begun in response to requests for assistance from the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops and as well as individual dioceses. First is an effort to provide consultancy on strategic investment and portfolio management. In November of 2009, the bishops of the United States were presented with a plan to protect diocesan financial resources and ensure that economic solvency would be maintained during this current climate of political, or of economic, I guess it's political too, volatility. Through the Leadership Roundtable's membership network, dioceses are able to get access to top asset managers for the most effective administration of their resources. And this is an important assistance because so often the church has not been sufficiently aggressive, nor has it exploited the size and the volume of the finances and the amount of investment capital that can be managed. And by leveraging a cooperation across horizontally the dioceses of the country, we can get much better access to the top money managers, even some of the people at Goldman Sachs, perhaps. At the same time, the bishops are provided discretion and independence that's necessary for effective stewardship of their finances and give them some guidance in how to ensure that those finances are maintained in an ethical and appropriate manner. The second area, also a place to leverage the size and volume of the church's needs, is in the area of coordinated procurement. The Leadership Roundtable has also presented bishops with a plan to coordinate their purchasing as a way of reducing costs on a planned, thoughtful, and very efficient basis. And with a somewhat unique relationship with partners that have already implemented coordinated procurement, such as the large business organizations in the United States, to say nothing of the U.S. government, The Roundtable is able to make a significant money-saving option available to both dioceses and Catholic organizations on a nationwide basis. Now, I've just skimmed the very surface of this. You're going to get a lot more detail later in the day on both of these national initiatives, and I encourage you to attend those sessions. The second area is communications, and I think all of us who have been involved with the Roundtable continue to be, at least I'll say I am, and I suspect others from my conversation, concerned that we're having difficulty getting the visibility that we would like associated with the Roundtable. We've made some great progress over the last 5 years, but there's still a lot more to do, because as I engage people, certainly in the communities out in California, the awareness of the Roundtable is pretty minimal. And that's an area I think that we continue to have to invest our resources. And this past year has been particularly active in this area. First of all, through the leadership of Jeff and Kerry and the whole staff here, we've made a lot of positive relationships now with media, so that the media actually comes to us and asks for opinion and feedback, help in writing articles, contributing to books and chapters in books, and making appearances both on television as well as on the web to provide quotes and commentary that help other media do a better job of describing the activities of the church, but more importantly, by involving the Roundtable, increase our visibility as well. In the past year, we've been very active with CNN, USA Today, the Washington Post, Newsweek, the whole catalog of all the major media in this country. And the more we can do that, and the more we can get that kind of visibility, people will become more and more aware of the Roundtable, and hopefully will begin to invest their own talents in contributing to our projects. The Roundtable was asked by Catholic TV, which is a nationally syndicated network, to produce a 3-part series on the activities of the Roundtable, and the premiere of that was held in May of 2010, just a month ago, and it's available online at catholictv.com. I encourage all of you to take a little bit of time to take a look at that program. I think you'll find it very interesting. The new Leadership Roundtable website, leadershiproundtable.org, and its accompanying Catholic Standards for Excellence that Tom already mentioned, along with Churchopedia, were launched in April 2010. And like any media, websites need to be constantly refreshed in order to get people to come back to them. And that's part of the investment that the Roundtable makes in disseminating the information about its activities. In the area of social networking, I'm sure you all have Facebook accounts and you tweet and Twitter and do all of that. But even if you don't, you will be pleased to know that the Roundtable has been very active in that area as well. And part of the reason for that is the demographic of people between the ages of 18 and 35 to 40 is very engaged in that form of media, something that perhaps some of us who are slightly more advanced in years are not as actively engaged in. But to reach that community, which is critical for the vitality of the church, you have to be a participant. And I think you'd be pleased to know that the Roundtable has taken leadership in that area. The DVDs that we've already talked about, they've provided a very simple way to get information out to the parishes and dioceses about various things that the Roundtable is engaged in. And while it's both part of our consultancy, it's also part of our media efforts to get visibility out into the community. And over 1,900 of those DVDs have already been distributed. The Archdiocese of Atlanta purchased copies of the DVD, about 100 of them, for all of their parishes to assist in the formation of financial councils and operations and other topics as well. And the Diocese of Knoxville used DVDs for the formation of parish councils, in particular in a newly formed parish in that area. And by that kind of activity, hopefully we can get the word spread throughout the Diocese of North America about the quality and the importance of using that kind of material. And finally, The Roundtable in particular and its members, the staff here, have provided keynotes and seminars at national conferences, convocations of dioceses, academic conferences, and a variety of gatherings across the United States, north and south and east and west. And so a very vital activity going on, something I'm very pleased to see as a member of the board, and I think you should all be pleased as members of the Roundtable community. Now let me turn it over to Father Jack Wall to take us through the 3 final projects that have come to fruition since we gathered here last year.
Thanks, John. Good morning. The title of this roundtable is about leadership, and one of the hopes of the purposes of our organization is to really strengthen the leadership of the Catholic community and the Catholic Church. It always strikes me that when we think about this church, although it takes rich expression in terms of the life of the church, institutionally and structurally, it's so simple for a global institution. We have the papacy that represents the universal mission. We've got a diocese that represents a significant area of that institution, and then you have a parish. So even though it's got this rich and expressions, institution structurally, so very, very simple, and there are very few layers in the middle of those that basic institution and structures of it. And so the role of pastor is one of those critical roles in terms of strengthening the experience of leadership. And I'd just like to focus on a couple of things on the role of pastor, and then also to talk about how we strengthen the leadership of pastor, and also to talk a little bit about future leadership in our church. Some of the initiatives we'd like to talk about. One is we've gone and created a virtual community of practice for Forum, utilizing all this online capabilities that Chuck has been speaking of in this whole new world of communication. Great news we'd like to report to you is we've taken the feedback and guidance that we've received in the past from this meeting and others to create CatholicPastor.org. CatholicPastor.org. It's been successfully launched and is providing priests with a valuable learning resource. It's a collaborative virtual learning forum, and it's part of an ongoing leadership formation within which priests, as a community of practice, can engage in an extended conversation with each other, learn from one another, and share best practices. Often we talk about what the business community can bring to experiences in the church in terms of leadership and organization and best practices. The idea really came from the military. General James Dubek, who's part of our organization, one of our directors on the board, brought this experience from Iraq and suggested that when you get into the experience of new places in which the military is present, Iraq, Afghanistan, the rules change. And the role of the field commander took on added importance, and they found that the manuals of leadership weren't sufficient. There was a learning thing that was going on right in the field. And that's also so very true, I think, of our pastoral leadership. I still remember a conversation many, many years ago with one of the great theologians from the Vatican Council, Scilax, who just died. I remember being in a conversation with him as a young priest and saying, well, what's the future of the church going to be? And he said, I'm an academic theologian. What we need is the future is going to be determined by the pastoral theologian. The people that are in the field creating and new and deeper expressions of the experience of the church. And so that role of the leader on the ground is so important, and what priests and the community is being formed with in pastoral life and parish life is so very, very critical. So this forum is an effort to try to link priests as a community of practice and to help through the technologies of the online tools and resources that pastors can find useful in their ministry. So we're now in the planning stage for additional online communities of practice. We invite you to visit www.catholicpastor.org for more information. And Jim Dubek, who's one of our board members, is spearheading this project and is looking to sign up every priest in this room to participate in this valuable initiative. Jim, why don't you stand up so people know Dubek. Tom Healey, to my right, should be speaking more deeply about this next one because it really is his brainchild, and he has really taken a lot of the leadership around it. And that is a new pastor's toolbox. The truth is that pastors today are being put in that position a lot sooner and with a lot less experience than once was true. Where in an older experience of church, a person who was an associate pastor for many times and learned on the job from mentoring relationships with other pastors and with other associate pastors, and was gradually weaned into this position of what it would mean to be pastor. Today, a young person is ordained and is often pastor immediately or within a very short period of time, and without a lot of on-the-job learning experience. And so there is need, and it's throughout the church, there's been efforts created to help a new pastor discover some of the skills that he needs and the working knowledge that goes along with it. And that's what the new pastor's toolbox is about. It's a week-long course, an accompanying reference book that's been created for pastors to provide fundamental assistance in the management of human and financial resources. So the program's been developed in partnership again, as Tom was suggesting, these collaborative efforts that I think is really at the heart of so much we're doing here, with Seton Hall University and the International Institute for Clergy Formation, located at Seton Hall. It's designed to help and equip new pastors for some of the complex challenges that will face them as they move into the 21st century parish and all its relationships. The first conference was held last July, and the second conference is scheduled for this July. Pastors will again participate in an intensive 6-day course on such topics as pastoral leadership, planning, community building, and stewardship. Synopsises of the workshops and classes from the 2009 seminar have been posted on the Leadership Roundtable website. And Tom is our lead on this, and anyone interested in knowing more about it, you'd be happy to hear your thoughts on how we can expand on this project. And the third effort really deals with the future of leadership in the Catholic community, and is focused on a young adult leadership effort. It is called ESTEAM, ESTEEM, Engaging Students to Enliven the Ecclesial Mission. It's a leadership program for Catholic young adults. It's been developed in partnership with St. Thomas More Catholic Chapel and Center at Yale, and we're really honored that Father Bob Lloyd is here, who is initiating this project along with Kerry Robinson and Michael O'Loughlin, and we're glad to talk to you about it. The program is an effort to equip the best and brightest young adult Catholics before they graduate from college to serve in meaningful leadership positions on diocesan and parish councils and board of trustees of Catholic institutions. So to take this young talent and leadership abilities and to really bring them into the service of the future of the church. The program began in the summer of 2009 at a conference that was held for campus ministers, priests and bishops and lay professionals working to strengthening the church. In the fall of 2010, 6 pilot sites, including Yale, Stanford, Sacred Heart, Connecticut, UCLA, Michigan State, and Ohio State, will launch ESTEAM, engaging students through retreats and workshops, seminars, and fieldwork to develop leadership skills, to build mentoring relationships, and prepare for life in the church outside the campus ministry setting. The goal is to create a national cohort of young adults who, upon their graduations, feel empowered to live out their baptismal obligations to both to serve and to strengthen the church. We are delighted that this program will impact students both at private and Catholic and secular colleges and universities across the nation. And we have a website, www.esteemleadership.org. Again, I certainly refer you to Bob and Kerry and Michael Laughlin to talk to you about this new initiative. Thank you.
So at this point, we open it up for discussion, reaction, questions, challenges. The floor is yours. And we have microphones coming down the aisles that can be passed to you. So, yes.
Just speak loudly. Sheila told me to stand up. have a question with regard to the toolbox that you have prepared for the new pastor. So I work in the area of child protection. Speak louder.
No, identify yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. Teresa Kettlecamp with the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. I have the Office of Child and Youth Protection. And one of the challenges we're seeing in the diocese is the integration of the international priests and the challenges the diocese are facing on a number of different fronts. And I was just wondering if that was one of the challenges that you address in your toolbox for new pastors and what we can learn from you. Thank you.
A great question. In the first session last year, we did not have anything on that. Basically, the program is about 15 modules. And that's just, and that's the way it's designed. We have in the program that's going to take place next month, an international module that will begin to at least deal with that. And so hopefully it'll be a little broader than just integrating international priests, because we're also going to focus on put in some on integrating with multicultural parishes, which is the other part of the problem. But the nice thing about the book part of it, we have it out to be published as a book. Cross your fingers that they actually say yes, and because that'll give us scale a lot faster. But we do have the ability to every year take feedback that comes from the students and from the faculty and improve it. And that's one of the changes we're making this year. And the second change we're doing is more on how do you deal with schools, and how do you deal with parishes and schools that are being combined, because those are issues. Those are also the very pressing issues. But stay tuned, and if you have thoughts on how to put more pieces in like that, catch up with me today or tomorrow.
Hi, Fred Blaznik from My Catholic Voice. We have an initiative in our diocese, Archdiocese of Kansas City, Kansas, where as a part of our financial council, we've identified a number of smoldering embers and hotspots that we just know are going to be issues in the future years. They stem from parish and school consolidation, from high schools that can't sustain themselves with the education, and a host of issues like that. We recently initiated a special task force to look at what these emerging threats are to the finances of the diocese. And I'm wondering if you're aware of resources that the Roundtable has, or other initiatives like this that we could connect with, that try to project 5 years out or 10 years out, what are these threats? How can we identify and deal with them now? Because my sense is they would be similar across many of the structures that, Jack, you were talking about.
We certainly try to track any diocesan innovative efforts to anticipate the future. And when we find examples like that, we try to disseminate it through the system. So my first response is we would be very interested in learning how you locally are going about that in your own diocese. I don't know if Jim Lundholm-Eads is here today. Yeah, Jim, you might comment on this too, because this is something that is really your forte. We, as a roundtable, try to identify people who have had expertise and success in a variety of these temporal matters. And Jim, in particular, is particularly adept at this. He's involved in our consultancy committee and provides counsel. So, Jim, if you might want to respond.
I just had to ask someone here what the question was. Yeah, I'm aware of one of the ways we've looked at that same question is we set up a separate corporation within our diocese, archdiocese, which is intentionally separate to go to parishes and look at the archdiocese as a whole. They are of us, but they are not us. And they go into the parishes that need that level of analysis that is not available. It's cheaper it was cheaper for us to do it, to set up a separate corporation to do this, to provide analysis, and it's basically they do pro forma projections for parishes, schools, and we never do parishes separate from schools. Schools separate from parishes, they're so integrated. And then across the archdiocese, they also keep an eye on the, when we see a trend in the archdiocese, we go to them and say, here's the trend that we're seeing. And then what they do is crunch the numbers to confirm or whatever, and then they lead us in facilitating what are the options here, what are the solutions. And what that's allowed us to get ahead of the curve in understanding the problems before it hits. And that's allowed us to remediate a lot of our past errors, because like any diocese, we're full of them. And what I notice as I go around different dioceses is exactly what you're talking about. The problem is repeatable and has been repeated across generations of dioceses. It's not just this generation, it's been repeated across. What's different is we're allowed to talk about it now, and we have the analytical capacity to name the problem and to name the solutions. And there's also a category we have, which is the too hard basket. And that's the category of parish or school, or parish-school combination, that the model just doesn't work anymore. And when the model just doesn't work anymore, the hardest thing though to ask people to do is to stop doing what's doing harm. And we've taken a stance where doing harm is not okay anymore. Doing actual harm to the whole of the local church, the whole of the archdiocese, on behalf of having one parish doing actual harm. We've had to raise people's understanding of local church to include the whole of the archdiocese, so their parish has a context, parish and school has a context. And if you don't put that context on it, you miss half the solutions that are available. And sometimes the solutions are very unpopular, I might add that. But I haven't had anybody scream at me for at least 3 weeks.
Two observations, if I can just add, having seen Jim's work, to underscore the data-driven nature of it really makes the planning exercise much more effective, and that's a huge difference. We've seen that. He was nice enough to do some work in our diocese, and it really makes a difference. There's a wonderful quote from Senator Moynihan when he was looking at Social Security. When he was leading the commission, he said, everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but no one's entitled to their own facts. And so getting the facts out makes the exercise. The second is, I think as we've seen it across the country in the 5 years of the Roundtable, we actually in the first year had a case study from Harvard on San Jose. Different dioceses have very different problems. The problems of a diocese in the industrial Northeast, or used to be industrial Northeast, are very different than San Jose, which was the problems of growth and how do you accomplish growth. And that's, again, why, just underscores why the data is so important.
Could I just add something to this? This is a very important and interesting question, and we have been wrestling with this because, as you can tell from the consultancy work that we've done, I would say a good portion of those 18 consultancies were related to Catholic education. We were invited a couple of months ago by the Obama administration to come down to Washington, asking whether or not we would be interested and willing to participate in convening leaders about faith-based inner-city education issues. And we've been discussing that among ourselves as to whether or not, we as a group are capable and should take on, that kind of activity, because we do see the interconnectedness from a temporal standpoint. There's no question about it. And frankly, we would be very, very interested in hearing this group's perspective on it, because there are some people who have been involved with us from the beginning who said, that may be a step too far for this organization at this particular point in time, just given all the other things that we have taken on. But if this is so crucial to the financial success or the temporal success or the mission success of the church in the United States today, then we can't ignore that, and that's something that we should, really concentrate on. So we would be very, very interested in hearing your perspective on this, because if we were to take it on, we have connectivity and access to resources, intellectual resources. I think the biggest problem are financial resources. And, there are so many different initiatives that we have started here, which, as you can tell, we're making progress, but we haven't gotten anywhere near the market share that we need to get to in order to have a real impact on the Church of the United States, which is ultimately our goal. And to take this on, in addition to that, is a real strategic question for the group. So we would be very interested in hearing people's perspective on this. So nobody has an opinion on it?
Let me just respond. I think that I think it's something you should really think seriously about. The Roundtable has a lot of priorities, but from the visibility that I have about what's really on the mind of many of the churches, the local churches at a diocesan level, that they're discovering that the traditional models of managing stewardship at a parish level doesn't work when you have such disparity of parish types now in a diocese. The educational model of funding with tuition at $8,000 per student at a Catholic high school just doesn't work in most demographics. And so these are hard issues. They're almost all in the too hard to handle bucket. And so actually having the types of resources that Jim is talking about, having the analytical capabilities, having the process and approach structures that the Roundtable has available, I think is an incredible resource to the hardest problems that we have right now. That's
Jeff, on the point, I keep looking at the word leadership there. And there is emergent leadership, and that's represented right in this group. There's appointed leadership, and that's not very well represented when you look at the hierarchical leadership of the church. And we've got to get them into it more. And it seems to me a way of doing that would be to put together some really creative case studies that address real problems. The example of the problem here of the parish with a parochial school. And then let those who are in the appointed leadership sit around the table and talk about it, because, and I don't mean to be critical in this sense, but they tend, like many professionals, to listen only to themselves. So if you give them the right case and you get the goodwill and the competence and the discussion, you're going to begin to surface some of the solutions. And you may find that you're going to get a two-part system. One is going to be the traditional parish with a school, and here's how you get that to work. and the other is the parish without a school, and here's how you compensate for the absence of a school by creative religious education. But I think you need good case studies, and you need people to sit around and talk about them, and typically the people who are in the appointed leadership, not the emergent leadership that we have here, are the people that really have their hands on the controls.
Hi, I'm Bishop Timothy Sr. here from Philadelphia, so welcome to our town. Sorry it's so warm, but it's just really like August in Philadelphia more than it is June. But we in Philadelphia, we have just a very long, wonderful history of Catholic elementary schools, and it is a major drain on the finances of our parishes, and then by extension on the Archdiocese as a whole. I think this issue, especially on the national level, could be the focus of the church. We bring so much to the table in this conversation, particularly in urban education. We still have in Philadelphia about 150 schools and about close to 90,000 students. That's down significantly, and we have about 50 schools now with elementary schools with less than 200 students, and we're experiencing major losses here in the city of Philadelphia. And I think it's a tremendous loss to our society that the expertise that the Catholic Church has developed in the provision of cost-effective, quality educational services and experiences in urban settings is one by one, school by school, disappearing. And here in Philadelphia, we have this phenomenon especially of a parallel private school system being developed in charter schools. And they look like Catholic schools, they act like Catholic schools. The only difference is that they're being paid for completely by the government, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And they attempt to imitate us. But I think we have a lot to bring to that discussion. And I always say a lot of strategies that are emerging, Philadelphia is not all just sort of urban stresses. We do have some pretty significant parishes that are growing and certainly can continue to sustain the traditional model of a Catholic school as a parish enterprise, and they should. But where that's no longer possible, to simply say we're going to retreat from this ministry that has been so effective and is so much a part of the life of our church, it's just a great loss. But we've been unable to come up with a consistent strategy that will help us over this. And we talk about vouchers, and you talk about the church being able to provide these services in a different way with different funding streams. I think that needs the strength of a national conversation. And if the Roundtable could help to facilitate that, I think it would be very valuable. We have here in Philadelphia, I think, a number of strategies that are emerging organically from the communities themselves. They come up with the parishes or clusters of parishes try to develop responses to this. But I've been in my position for just less than a year now. We have to start to plan for this in a much more systematic way. When the diocese begins to do that for parishes, we're taking something from those local communities that has always been the ministry of a local parish and beginning to plan for it. There's a paradigm shift there that's sometimes quite difficult for parishes to accept and to enter into. But I love that idea. Everyone is entitled to an opinion, but no one is entitled to their own facts. That's so helpful in conversations. But I would just welcome the Roundtable's facilitating a national discussion about keeping the Catholic Church's contribution to urban education part of what sustains our cities and can make such, and is making, although under tremendous stress, a tremendous contribution to urban education. So.
Another piece of data that just heard recently was surprising to me, and also I think reaffirms what we're trying to do with the Leadership Roundtable. Recently in Chicago, they did just a study of the parishes in terms of how they were doing financially across the diocese, and they kind of divided it from the neediest inner city places to the very affluent communities, and they divided it in kind of cohorts. And in every cohort, 20% of the parishes were in trouble. So it's not just the poor me, it kind of gets into this question of leadership and effective leadership in each place, and how we can bring those tools to the church and everyone as well. So it's not just an inner city issue, but it's something that kind of goes across the board of every level of the community. Why is it some places you have two parishes next to each other, and one school is doing very, very well, and one isn't? What's that issue here? They may be a very poor school, or it could be a very affluent community, and they both are struggling with some of the same issues around effectiveness.
Hi, Bill McGarvey from Busted Halo. I have two questions, or two points maybe to raise about that. I'm wondering if the Leadership Roundtable could be partner or collaborating with the Notre Dame's ACE program, which I know is now franchising, essentially. I know St. Joe's University in Philadelphia is doing basically a satellite program of ACE, which, for those who don't know, it's basically inner city Catholic education. It's like a teaching core that these young teachers will also get a master's in education, I believe, by the time they're done and they're given their years of service. And they've, I think, statistically have shown that there's been a great these people end up staying with these schools for a long time, providing a quality education. The second point is I do a lot of work with the Archdiocese of New York's Catholic school system. They have a big scholarship program, Cardinal Scholars, as well as Be a Student's Friend, and it's wonderful. And for years I've been working on their annual reports, and they've often cited that their statistics in terms of graduation rates, et cetera, have been incredible given next to New York City's public schools, which some would argue would not be a very high threshold. But the real issue is now the charter schools, as somebody was saying, and I said to them, I actually do their communications for them, and I said, you've got to, because the fact of the matter is they're finding a lot of, what's happening in a lot of these inner city schools in New York City is a huge percentage of these kids aren't from Catholic homes. The parents are sending them there, one, because they're safe, and they haven't had that in the public schools, and there's discipline, there's education. These are also self-selecting families, obviously. But they've yet to prove that the education is significantly better than a charter school, and a parent's going to be like, well, I'm paying on my, that's I think where we really have to sort of, I said, do we have numbers on why these are better than charter schools? Because parents are seeing brand new buildings going up in their neighborhoods. Why am I going to spend $2,000 a year when this is a great education? It's something I think we really have to concentrate on as well.
Don Monin from Boston College. Just to extend that a little bit, I think that, clearly the question of parochial schools is such an enormous one throughout the country. But, I mean, it is also so large a problem and so complex a problem. For us to take primary responsibility, I think, would be a very, very difficult undertaking. And I would suggest that before we make a decision on taking such responsibility, we sit down with some of the universities, because some of the best resources for beginning to resolve what the parochial school system should look in the future, what its goals should be, and what type of programs can be developed. I think many of the best resources are in the universities today. Just recently, we received approximately $40 million, to train principals both in public and in parochial schools, and another 15 to cooperate with the Catholic and the public school system in creating multi-service types of programs, where in addition to the purely academic subjects, they really try to, within the school system, deal with so many of the problems that families are experiencing, whether they are immigrants, whether they have legal problems, health problems, and so forth. So that there's a lot of good work going on in the universities, and still the problem remains that it is just an enormous question as to what the parochial school system should be, ideally, in this day and age. But I think the bottom line of what I'm saying is that the problem is real. We should take a part in it, but I think we should sit down with some of the university programs and attempt to see what each can do in addressing the problem.
I think we have time for one last comment before inviting John Allen forward.
Just a comment on this. when I look across the US with regard to parochial schools, what I don't see is any aggregation of the talent. I've seen, like, Notre Dame has had a great initiative in looking at the problem of Catholic schools financing. Boston College has had a shot at it. The NCEA has been putting out models and so on. But I don't see anybody taking the initiative to pull all that together so that all those initiatives are talking to each other. And I'm wondering if the Roundtable, in its unique position of not being beholden to membership, the way some of the other Catholic acronyms are, and I'm wondering if the leadership Roundtable could be the forum that could bring that together. Nobody's been able to do that, and because the solution lies, I believe, in a systemic view, not an individual view, and that's scalable at the diocesan level. An individual solving it for this parish and then that parish doesn't work, because there's the system must work. Nationally, there needs to be that level of conversation and solution. We know what doesn't work, and our solution has often been, then let's do what doesn't work harder. And that only creates more bleeding. And so I'm wondering if we being the Roundtable can be the place that happens. The second piece is if the presidential administration, whether it was Obama or whatever, there is a risk in doing that, a political risk of joining with, of going to that conversation. But the fact is the Roundtable is the one that's been invited from the faith community. And if not the Roundtable, then who is willing to engage in that conversation? I'd encourage you to go for it.
You know, it was interesting when Jim Shelton from the administration was the one who asked us, and we met with a group of people. But when you push back and you say, okay, what are you going to do? And they say, well, we'll cooperate and we'll help, and we can help convene, and we can help bring some people together. But when you ask for money, or if you ask for, something specific, all of a sudden, they're great at telling you what the problem is. They're not too great at, offering something up. But I will say I attended a session the other day on the education issue, particularly on charter schools and new ways of dealing with education. And there were 450 to 500 people there. Half of them were programmatic people, and half of them were funding people. Represented some of the, the leading foundations of the country were there. Now, we might want to consider next year maybe focusing on this topic here and trying to use our convening power on both sides of the fence, the funding side as well as the programmatic side on an issue like this. Father Monin used a very important word, which responsibility. I question whether or not we could take on the responsibility to do anything, and because the great institutions of the country have been involved. But if people thought that us being involved in convening those sorts of leaders to come in and share with all of us in a collective way the best ideas that they've developed, and to try to use the voice that we have, because we have connectivity to the secular world, whether it be the government or other funding institutions, or frankly, I had Wendy Kopp in my office the other day. Now, if Teach for America, if there's been a better private organization to attract young people to quality teaching, I don't know who it is. And having something like that for the parochial school system, to me, would be an interesting endeavor too. So I think this is something that we might want to seriously consider.
Great.
Okay,
Well,
thanks.
that's a nice advertisement. This morning's discussion is a nice advertisement for Richard Burke's breakout session on the financial health of Catholic schools and management. And we will take this suggestion under advisement at our board meeting at the end of tomorrow's session. Please, before I invite Susan King, another trustee, forward to introduce our keynote this morning, join me in a round of applause for my fellow colleagues.